We create gods, establish faith, and depict our redemption. We hold the lineage, analyze the ether, in order to become the omniscient one. Keywords of the novel. Extraordinary Genealogy Series No Pop-ups, Extraordinary Genealogy Series TXT Complete Collection Download, Extraordinary Genealogy Series Latest Chapter Reading. Chapter 1. Sacrifices. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1 Sacrifices, Pop 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 Pop. In the dimly lit hall, a rhythmic round of applause rang out, and as the applause fell, rows of young men in black formal attire respectfully stood in front of the person applauding. If outsiders see this scene at this moment, they will definitely feel extremely scared. Because these teenagers are almost identical, golden hair and golden eyes, possessing an extremely handsome appearance. Whether it's height, appearance, or clothing, they all maintain astonishing consistency, with the only difference being a small number in the line below their right eye socket. They maintained delicate smiles and their eyes were stunned. Stand up now. The person making the sound was a woman in a black dress, with red hair and a seductive face. The woman's name is Karada Weddle. Kradashi Weedle was now looking at the statue in front of him with a passionate expression on his face. The statue has a beautiful face and is covered in red fruits, except for gold ornaments, including headgear, necklace, and bracelet. Her fingers and toes are claw-shaped, and there is also a diagonal corner, which may or may not be considered part of her headwear. Under the poison moon, amber no longer flowed, and snow was dyed red by her. For Arn, he drank the yeast from Levada's kiss deeply. Arn lay down on her pale chest, sharing a joyful rest together. Kradari clasped his hands together in a prayer gesture, murmuring softly. With her whispers, a blood-red mark appeared on the back of her fair hand, with the outer ring of the mark in red and a curved image outlined inside. From a distance it looks like a bleeding goat, but up close it looks like a twisted tentacle. The great Arn, the most desirous one, the high blood savior, mother. On the eve of the Orocho hunt, your faithful servant prays faithfully to you, and when Vavusajat, moment of strength, arrives, I will offer the most abundant sacrifice. Karadahi's mind was fully focused on praying to one of the four saints of Arn, Levada. What she didn't know was that among the rows of reverent and dull golden-haired youths standing, a boy with the right eye socket numbered D.503 suddenly had an unusually agile gaze. I really want to collapse now, Kradashi, this crazy woman. Xia Xiu muttered to himself. His name is Xia Xiu, a traveler from the beautiful great heavenly dynasty, and this is his first month of travel. Before his time traveling, Xia Xiu was playing a game called Terra Chronicles, which is known as the virtual reality game of the Blue Star era. At that time, the game had just completed the 6th version of the data update, which was originally named The History of All Realms. As a top-tier player in the game, Xia Xiu, known as the #1 handsome guy in Terra, is preparing to continue actively showcasing himself in the new version. Unexpectedly, as soon as his eyes closed and opened again, he crossed over. Unfortunately, he didn't travel to any down-and-out nobles, disappointed kids, or street beggars. He traveled specifically to the doll created by the game villain using flesh and blood shaping techniques. This thing is not the kind of artificial person made with philosopher's stone, it belongs to high-end creation. The BIO species is a very unique technique, which is a variant of reality created by the cult's divine avatar, his overturned infinity, after worshippers of the flesh-seeking sect pray to the great sorcerer Arn. This species is also known as the BIO species, type by players. BIO species are usually ugly and deformed creatures. Their existence itself is a tribute to Cthulhu's aesthetics. Mr. Keselu will feel very friendly when he sees them. The BIO creation ceremony is not complicated, just offer a piece of flesh and blood, and his overturned infinity will replicate countless strange and distorted creations for you. The woman in front of Xia Xiu, named Keladaxi, is a member of one of the 8 branches of the flesh-seeking sect, the Inner Awakening. This woman can be said to be a strange flower in the sect. Kurata Weddle, she is an extremely special existence. Firstly, there is her bio species, which is not a conventional distorted form, but a completely new thing. You can tell from the rows of beautiful young men standing in the hall that this old woman's bio type is all handsome men. There are no beautiful women. Meanwhile, her bio also maintains some physiological functions, so the nature of this thing suddenly changed. Karadachi also sold her satisfactory works to the market at exorbitant prices. Even so, her works are still in short supply. For the first time in the market, players bought the marble, sold by director Kradash, and saw an unprecedented new world through the projection magic inside. Many people exclaimed in surprise on the spot. Some female players fall into the trap just to buy works directed by Ku. For players who are playful, Kradashi is one of the few bosses not to be explored, but unfortunately, this woman played herself to death in the later stages. But now for Xia Xiu, who has become a Kradachi bio, he is not happy at all. He is facing many problems now. Firstly, bio species are not human. In theory, he is just a piece of meat that could collapse at any time. Secondly, he should still maintain his purity by now, and Kurata has not yet dealt with him or a new batch of works. Xia Xiu noticed that he only has 9 works of the same genre, and none of these 9 works have been favored by the old woman yet. Following the death method of Kradari in his previous life, Xia Xiu quickly guessed what his work was, which accelerated his desire to kill the other person. As a follower of Levada, Kradari enjoys indulging himself, and most of his indulgence targets his most satisfying works. And the only thing that can help Kradash suppress his desires is huge benefits, such as the hunt for Orocho. Tomorrow is Orocho's hunt, which is a religious holy day of the flesh-seeking sect, similar to Christmas. At this time, believers usually pray devoutly and offer generous sacrifices on the day of the festival. As expected, he would be a sacrifice, so he must quickly find a way to take down Kurata. You all stay here for me tonight, and according to the blueprint I provided you, you have drawn the magic array for me. After praying, Kurata finished. Turn around and say to your own works. Yes, madam. D.503, come over here for a moment. Xia Xiu remained respectful and came to Kradash's side. You are responsible for supervising your peers, and I will introduce the portrayal method into your mind. Kurata extended his right hand, while Xia Xiu obediently lowered his head. Karadahi placed his right hand on Shakio's head, and soon she had transmitted the necessary construction array for this sacrifice. After the transmission was completed, Kradash felt a bit tired. After giving a few instructions to Xia Xiu, she left here. A woman with kidney deficiency. Watching Kradashi, who was holding onto his abdomen and moving away, Xia Xiu muttered to himself in his heart. Newcomer's new book, seeking recommendation, seeking collection, seeking tickets, end of this chapter. Chapter 2. 500 at a time. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. 500 at a time. After confirming that Kradash had left, Xia Xiu slowly began to observe the transmitted memories. They are all ancient magical array styles that are disconnected from the mainstream magical structure of Terra today. This woman, as a reformist in the flesh-lusting sect, still uses such an outdated array structure, which shows how unmotivated the other party is. A matrix is a geometric structure constructed through drawing techniques to obtain controllable outputs. The manifestation of magic formation system among different civilizations and cultures is very complex and diverse. However, under the standardized research system of modern magic in Terra, magic formation theory has also been standardized, and its functional parts are simply divided into 4 parts. Magic source structure, guidance structure, utility structure, and rebound correction structure. The magical array used by Kurata for blood sacrifice belongs to an old and almost obsolete version in the flesh-seeking sect, which is still limited to summarizing the basic structure of the array as a layered structure centered on the energy supply part. Usually a concentric circle. This is not rigorous, in most cases, it can even be said that this is incorrect. In what era are you still drawing circles? Do you think you are Hornheim? This is exactly what I want. Xia Xiu's mouth showed a brilliant and unusual smile. Women, magic is a very dangerous thing. One mistake can lead to irreparable harm. Pop 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 pop. Xia Xiu patted his hands, and the ladies around him who were just like him looked up to him, while he smiled at his fellow creatures and said, "Let's start setting up a magic formation and follow the master's orders." Yes. Bio species do not require sleep or food, they consume Eve particles, so this thing is still cheap labor. After a busy night, the ritual array used for blood sacrifice has been basically constructed. In the morning, Karadahi was carried down from the living room by a burly handsome man. She was wearing a pink nightgown, her eyes blurred, and the black circles under her eyes were unusually thick. Xia Xiu noticed the mark on the neck of the handsome man holding her. This woman is really good at playing. CC, take me to the shower. D.222, bring me my dress. Yes. D.222 is a handsome uncle with beautiful white hair, who respectfully follows behind Kradash. Half an hour later, dressed in grand attire, Karada appeared in front of Xia Xiu. At this moment, her face was as peach blossom as Xia Xiu stared at the extra mark on D.222's neck, falling into a state of silence. Karadahi stared at the formation in front of him. The center of the array is a core magic source structure constructed with various colored materials, with an edge depicting countless complex patterns in a circle. Centered around it, there are 10 straight lines extending outward, connecting a circle constructed with mercury. 10 of you, stand on the branch for me. Yes. Xia Xiu and his companions stood honestly within the mercury circle, while Karadahi stood at the center of the circle. Then she began her sacrifice towards the statue of Levada. I have gazed upon the faceless, his overturned servant of the infinity. Their owners are blind. They are castrated by our words and intentions. He sings disorderly songs and won't come back. These terrifying spirits are not worthy of our love, do not sacrifice until the stars are aligned. The imprint of Levada reappeared in Kradashi's hand, singing like a madman, and the imprint in her hand became increasingly bright red. I will offer my offering here, from the heavenly genealogy, bloodline of the Holy Church. Abraham. This woman died in this way, even the lineage of heaven and Abraham's blood dared to touch her. If this matter were to be leaked, the heretical court of the Holy See would have exposed you in minutes. Oh, this woman was directly slapped by the heretic hunter because of the revelation of the matter, and her soul medium was also used as fuel to shine and heat up in the ocean of Ethereum. Great Levada, please grant me the power to distort this world. Let my spirit transcend, let me ascend into the ocean of the ether. I will bow down at Arn and your feet, kissing your souls lightly as expected. This woman wants to become a magician. To become a magician, one must undergo spiritual sublimation, immerse one's soul medium into the extraordinary source of the ether ocean, and then form one's own field to gain the power to distort the present world. The statue of Levada began to change, and she opened her eyes to gaze at the devout believers in front of her. Upon seeing the resurrection of the statue, Karadahi was filled with excitement. Just as she was about to express her wish and offer her sacrifice, a mutation occurred. Ah! Levada let out a piercing scream, her eyes blood-stained with blood, and she looked resentfully at the frightened woman in front of her. Karadashi was frightened by the sudden change, her face pale, and her lips involuntarily trembled. She wanted to leave, but found herself unable to move. What's going on here? If you seek treasures, omnipotence, and prestige to conquer and tyrannize politicians, then leave and return to the shadow of your dark ambitions, understanding that you cannot escape the light of us. But if you desire to learn wisdom, to break the shackles of slavery, to perceive the potential of humanity, Then I will embrace you as my blood relative and teach you the path of the whole flesh. At this moment, the magic array under Kradari's feet changed, with various runes turning into Mercury, while the branch magic array that was supposed to be Mercury became the main body. A magnetic voice shattered Karada's confusion. She twisted her head stiffly and looked at the sacrifice number D.503 standing in the main formation, feeling an unprecedented shock in her heart. You, why are you? The eyes of Bio in front of him were full of spirituality, and he was now clasping his hands together, reciting classics he had never heard of before. Xia Xiu did not respond to the other party, he continued to recite the mantra. The mantra he is currently reciting is the Black Sea Evangelism of Arn, which ranks very high in the prayer sequence of the flesh-seeking sect. Old prayer texts like those of Karada are easily pushed out by gas. Now, Xia Xiu is the leader of the magic array. At this point, the statue of Levada was covered in blood red all over, and the stone-like eyes began to show tender flesh buds. The flesh buds then began to multiply in alternate, forming a pair of terrifying eyes. Levada stared at Xia Xiu, with countless deep red worms wriggling alternately in her eyes, and tiny granulation buds appearing in each other's sockets. Prayer. The eerie stress swirled in the hall, and everyone except Xia Xiu fell into a state of semi-delirium when they heard it. The enchanting tone and countless inverted images filled their minds. Xia Xiu smiled at the corners of his mouth, and this temporary method of stuffing was developed during the 4th expansion pack, which was summarized by a group of high-spending gold players who spent a lot of sacrifice items. The development purpose is also very simple. It can be used to interrupt various rituals of the flesh-seeking sect, although the cost is marked by Arn, players do not care. They can spend money to hire the newly built machine to fight for them, after all, it's a newly built account. If it's marked, just delete it and start over. Because the market price for hiring machine is 500, this method is also known as 500 at a time. The specific process of 500 yuan per transaction is as follows. Precondition. A flesh-seeking believer initiates a sacrificial formation, which needs to be driven by prayer and spells. Plug-in process. A set of non-visual hiding arrays. Spell. Arni's Black Sea Mission, spell. Levada Falls and Reborn, several sacrificial offerings, usually for the flesh-seeking believers who initiate the formation and their offerings. Hidden condition. A brilliant and unparalleled performance. Dance, opera, winning by weakness. As long as they can please Arn and the 4 saints, even the most lowly species can receive unparalleled rewards. Ritual effect. Obtain the seal of Arn. His symbolic symbols include spirals, broken chains, blood droplets, sickles, and eulapolos, an ancient symbol depicted as a tail snake, symbolizing an infinite cycle of life and death. Complete the hidden conditions to obtain gifts and lineage. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Genealogy. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3 Genealogy. Yane said to Levada. Her will is not free. She is bound by blood, shaped by blood, and so are you. Let your delusions of power fade away, because you have never been free. You have always been a slave. Your traditions, the power of your talents that you deserve, are all illusions. Who is there to hide behind your mask of violence and hegemony? What remains after the truth remains? At this point, it is the end of the 3rd stage of the stoppage process, the fall and rebirth of Levada. As the prayer spell is spoken, the 4th stage follows, sacrifice. Karadahi roared inwardly as she wanted to reach out and touch the pentagram pendant around her neck, which contained the BIO-type drive command. Ms. Kradash Whittle, can I help you? Xia Xiu didn't know when he came to Kradash's side. He reached out his index finger and touched Kradash's throat. His index finger slowly slid down and stayed on the chain of the pendant. Then his index finger turned, and the chain wrapped around his index finger. Karadahi stared at the smiling blonde boy with a sorrowful and indignant gaze in front of her. She couldn't figure out how a bio could resist her. "Oh, I forgot you can't speak. Beautiful lady, could you dance with me?" Karadahi glared angrily, while Shashio had already taken her right hand, lowered his head, and lightly kissed the lavada mark on the back of her hand. Then, his right hand clasped with his 10 fingers, and he placed his left hand on his shoulder, while his left hand supported her slender waist. "Come, let's sing a song for Arn." Xia Xiu began to dance in the hall, holding on to the stiff Karada. The dance looked awkward, but Xia Xiu seemed to enjoy it very much. He dragged Karada for 10 minutes before stopping the ridiculous dance. "Ah, madam, thank you for your dance accompaniment and..." After Xia Xiu finished jumping, he deliberately took a few steps back to maintain enough distance from Kradash, and then he very gentlemanly helped himself up to thank him. Karadahi realized she could move now, and she suddenly pulled off her pendant, her eyes red. "You scumbag! I want you." Just as Kradash was planning to drive the technique on the pendant, she noticed that her hair began to detach, her skin began to sink, followed by her fingers and nose bridge. Karadahi transformed into flesh at an astonishing speed. She struggled forward like a flesh-colored jelly, squinting and smiling blonde boy reaching out her hand. Her 2 eyes shifted with the redundancy of her body, with one eye in her mouth and the other on her head. "Thank you for your hospitality. Equivalent exchange human body." The young man with blonde hair and golden eyes placed his index finger in his mouth and said to Karada, as bright red lines began to appear on the back of his hands, and the number under his eyes disappeared. "Next is the sacrifice, great sorcerer Arn. I offer you the most interesting sacrifice, a foolish soul, and a little bit of the bloodline of heaven stage 4. Sacrifice completion. Hidden condition. Exciting performance completion." The formation began to light up, and Kradari, who had turned into flesh pieces, struggled frantically. On the other side, the blonde boy like Xia Xiu also began to slowly become redundant. The statue of Lavada showed a terrifying smile, and the statue began to make a strange chewing sound. Whenever the chewing sound sounded, a part of the meat disappeared out of thin air. As the chewing sound grew faster and faster, Xia Xiu was soon the only one left in the entire formation. The Lavada statue looked at Xia Xiu, while Xia Xiu grinned and said, "Have a pleasant meal, madam." The corners of the statue's mouth began to bend towards both sides of the eyes, and a terrifying smile appeared before Xia Xiu's eyes. It seems that she is in a good mood. At this time, the patterns on Xia Xiu's hand back were completely formed, a bright red circle with a swirling shape near it. Ritual effect. Seal of Arnth Vortex, Buzz. Xia Xiu could only feel a loud ringing in his ears, as his soul withdrew from his body at this moment. This was the sublimation of his soul, and at this moment, his soul would be projected onto the ocean of the ether. Upward and downwards, dazzling and bizarre. You can see the vast starry sky, as well as the overturned ocean, floating ethereal spirits, and burning demons when return to the 3rd place. The huge sound shattered the confused consciousness, and Xia Xiu woke up in the ocean of the ether, then quickly stabilized the floating spiritual body. This was the critical moment. The sublimation of spirituality, the extraordinary awakening, the moment of connecting lineages. Oren. Xia Xiu quickly recited the linking words of the desire for meat genealogy, and an ancient parchment appeared in front of Xia Xiu. He quickly placed his hand on it, and soon his name appeared on it. The ancient parchment automatically appeared with a circle of ancient Terra characters. Authorized. If ordinary people think of lineage linking words without authorization, they will die a miserable death. At the moment when the link was completed, Xia Xiu briefly glimpsed the body of the infinity that he had overturned in the ocean of Ethereum. It was a huge, boundless monster whose form constantly twisted and changed. Xia Xiu knew that he would be his anchor in the ocean of Ethereum from now on. Xia Xiu has officially become a member of the lineage of desire flesh, and he is now both an observer and a component of the ether ocean. The ocean of Ethereum. It is a barrier between the existence of positive matter space and antimatter space, a world composed of concepts, and also the source of transcendent matter. Terra's extraordinary system is based on the ocean of the Ethereum, which is collectively known as the miracle. The essence of magic is a change in concept. Genealogy is the aggregation of concepts, and it has another name. STC, Standard Template Construction, System Technology. Ding. Genealogy link, template generation in progress. Welcome, my dear Olin Xia Xiu, class. Olin, ++ genealogy. Carnation Church, ++ Arad Field. None ++ job description. Rehabilitation 3, Main Protector Resurrection, Transformation, and Child Protection, ++ Stage 1. Surveyor ++ Eve Particle Content. 100 Ling ++ Loudness. 10 dB, decibels, ++ Timbre. Unsteady Wave ++ Frequency. 164,698 Hz, ++ Twisted Stance. 100, Normal, ++ Entries. Flesh Shaping Technique, Mark of Arn, no need to doubt, this is a personal template. As long as Terra has a lineage of NPCs, they are basically one in hand. In the early stages of the game Terra Chronicles, there was a particularly outrageous setting, which was that the game system and player templates were also part of Terra's lineage. This means that it can be seen, as the same lineage owner can see the templates of other lineage owners. After all, everyone is using the same server. The bewildered player looked at the NPC's more magnificent personal template. The initial personal template of the game is equivalent to the original skin, and didn't know how to play the game for a moment. The indigenous people of Terra quickly taught the players how to play, and the players were jointly pursued by various forces of Terra. They chased the player from the first expansion to the second expansion. The reason why we didn't cut back later was because we found that players could perform a cost-effective lineage conversion and couldn't jump freely, which led to a slight convergence. Any fourth-day disaster is empty, and players are almost cut into the fourth-day paste. If it weren't for the fact that this game was Blue Star's first fully conscious virtual infiltration game, and there was a convertible relationship between its own currency system and Blue Star's currency system, dogs wouldn't play this abusive game. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Genealogy of the Heavenly Kingdom. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4 Genealogy of the Heavenly Kingdom. Ding. Just as Xia Xiu thought the signing had been completed and the sublimation had ended, a strange tinkling bell rang, which was exceptionally clear, like a wind chime. Xia Xiu's pupils involuntarily contracted, and he felt an unusual surprise in his heart at this moment. The notification sound of different lineages sounds different, similar to a mobile phone ringtone. The notification sound of the desire to flesh lineage can make people associate with rock, but the notification sound he hears now seems like a holy chant. This is the singing of the Heavenly Kingdom. In his previous life, he was a player in the first tier of the Heavenly Kingdom lineage, so it's natural to hear him. But why? I have already chosen to have sex with flesh, verified bloodline detected. Abraham, in the lineage link. Link words. Unlike the carnal lineage, the Heavenly Kingdom lineage is a heavy book with 6 angels depicted on its surface and a silver cross in the middle. This is not a joke. Can't the think tank in heaven see that I now have a master of the famous grass? Moreover, although I have successfully transformed from a bio species to a human through rituals, even with a little heavenly bloodline in my body, it is not enough to summon the Book of Revelation. And the desire for flesh lineage is on the side. They surprisingly did not fight. Link words. The Book of Revelation once again issued a reminder that it was almost on top of Xia Xiu's spiritual body. Xia Xiu glanced at the parchment beside him and found that the other person had become blind like some characters in movies, and there was no indication of this face-to-face NTR behavior. As for the revelations of the Tauren, it was extremely ecstatic as it vigorously rubbed against Xia Xiu's body. Xia Xiu reluctantly pressed down the Book of Revelation from his own face. Judging from the situation, if he didn't follow the Book of Revelation today, he wouldn't be able to do it. It's not my fault. Xia Xiu pressed his right hand on the Book of Revelation, his face becoming very solemn. While recalling the linking words in his mind, he began to recite. Sometimes embrace, sometimes not embrace, sometimes searching, sometimes losing, sometimes conservative, sometimes abandoned, tears sometimes, stitches sometimes, silence sometimes, words sometimes. This is the proclamation for the acquisition of the Red Book in the Heavenly Kingdom Genealogy. The Heavenly Kingdom Genealogy is the largest extraordinary genealogy of Terra, so it gathers 5 common forms of expression in Terra's genealogy, which are, the white paper represents the meaning of cleanliness, simplicity, and directness. The blue book represents rigor, science, objectivity, and more. The green book represents life, innovation, the future, and more. The yellow book symbolizes openness, inclusiveness, attention, etc. The red book, which contains warnings, inspirations, and other meanings. These are the 5 common lineage forms in the Terra continent, also known as the norm. Generally, having 2 normal lineages is necessary to establish an external sect. There are 5 types in the Heavenly Kingdom, which shows how deep it is. By the way, the desire for flesh lineage belongs to a special lineage, which is generally referred to as heteromorphism. Link completed. Certification words. Angels. No name retrieved. Whether to name independently. Xia Xiu was not surprised by this. This situation is similar to that of a player. If a player switches to the Heavenly Kingdom lineage, Revelation will automatically search for the entire Terra, and the player belongs to an extraterrestrial guest, so it cannot be detected. At this point, it is up to you to choose your own name. Xiu, my name is Xiu. Already included in the Book of Life, Xiu is the name of Xia Xiu's character in the Heavenly Kingdom in his previous life. Perhaps because he has already registered his real name in the Desire Meet section, he should still use the name from his previous life in the Heavenly Kingdom. How could he feel guilty about stepping on 2 boats? Hugh Abraham, Class. Angels, ++ Genealogy. Heavenly Kingdom. Red Book, ++ Arad Field. None ++ Job Description. None ++ Stage 1. Surveyor ++ Eve Particle Content. 100 Ling ++ Loudness. 10 dB, decibels, ++ Timbre. Unsteady Wave ++ Frequency. 164,698 Hz, Hertz, ++ Twisted Stance. 100, Normal, ++ Entry. None. The Book of Revelation divided a ball of light, which was wrapped in a red book. The book automatically flipped pages, displaying the content shown above. Xia Xiu looked at the floating parchment on the left, then at the red book on the right, and instinctively touched his chin. Double lineage, and 2 incompatible opposing lineages, is this my golden finger? Are the think tank systems of these 2 major lineages blind? When will the relationship between Eden and Ada Perth be so good that they can work together? Just as Xia Xiu was pondering, the parchment turned into a red light and ran into his right hand, while the red book ran into his left hand. Bang! A huge roar sounded in Xia Xiu's ear. He knew it was a symptom of staying in the ether ocean for too long. He knew he was about to pop out the ether ocean, so he followed his usual habit and disconnected his consciousness link on his own. When Xia Xiu opened his eyes again, he had already returned to the hall where Karada was sacrificed. At this time, the entire hall, except for him, had only the restored statue of Levada. After Xia Xiu returned to this world, the first thing he did was to stretch out his left and right hands and try to stroke in the air at the same time. A red and antique-colored curtain appeared in front of him. Above the red curtain is a description of the heavenly lineage, while the ancient and simple colored curtain represents the desire for flesh lineage. Both lineages can summon simultaneously, and I can feel that the content of Eve particles is 200 spirits. According to the initial situation of the game, the first link between players or other lineage owners, regardless of the size of the lineage, will receive a 100 spirit Eve particle count. Now, he has a 200 spirit Eve particle content, which means he eats 2 portions of the spectrum alone. Why is this? Xia Xiu instinctively touched his chin and began to think, knowing, all the gifts bestowed by fate have already been secretly priced. Previously, due to the presence of Karada, he had not carefully thought about his travels. He can still vividly recall any detail of his past life, yes, any place. He seems to be a patient with amnesia, and all his past memories are so clear to him. As long as he wants, he can recall any content from any book he has read in the past. However, he keenly sensed a loophole in his memory. He didn't remember the 12 hours before logging into the game, in other words, he didn't have those 12 hours of memory. It's really interesting. Xia Xiu smiled happily while thinking, and he did not reject interesting things. When Terra Chronicles first appeared in his previous life, he keenly noticed the uniqueness of this game. During his years playing the game, he had been conducting some interesting experiments. As he did more and more experiments, a doubt in his heart grew heavier. Is this really a game? End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Stage and Class. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Stage and Class. Are only 3 bio species still alive. The rest have all hung up with the old woman Kradash. It's a pity. Xia Xiu held a red pendant in his hand and felt the message coming from inside through the driving rune. He transmitted 5 spiritual Eve particles into the pendant, summoning all 3 bio species. The 3-headed wolf-shaped creature stood in front of Xia Xiu. They have sharp teeth, constantly dripping green liquid from their mouths, and the most frightening thing about them is the 8 single eyes on their heads. EP1-10 model, a special interactive model made by the Midnight Worm, which is durable and easy to feed. A standard model of Magic Stone is their monthly rations, ability. Bite, liquid toxins, superb vision, just enough to make up for the difficult period of my initial lack of entries. Xia Xiu summoned the Desire Flesh lineage and then depicted a reverse summoning array on it. Through the reverse summoning array, he accommodated all 3 bio species onto the lineage. The reverse summoning cost him a total of 15 spirits. The reverse summoning array is a basic array commonly used by first-stage measurers, which can accommodate some extraordinary creations to the public containment service area of the lineage, and the magician needs to pay the corresponding Eve particles for each containment or summoning. Dharma formation is one of the most important knowledge besides extraordinary entries, and Xia Xiu has a great love for it. According to game terminology, this thing does not occupy the skill box. As long as you can draw and have Eve particles, you can use them directly. Xia Xiu casually drew a summoning array on the lineage and then clicked Save. Public Storage, Live. BIO 202-3, Command Summoning. 5 spirits per head. After finishing, Xia Xiu clapped his hands in satisfaction, and at the same time, he lifted his hand, and the Seal of Arn appeared on his hand. Seal of Arn. Vortex, Effect. Eve particle recovery efficiency plus 30%, praise Arn. Xia Xiu continued to review the entry content of the blood and meat shaping technique. Blood and flesh shaping technique, effect. Simple flesh and blood operations can be performed, and flesh and blood synthesis rituals can be performed. The technique of shaping flesh and blood is the skill of returning to the 3rd position, and returning to the 3rd position, as one of the 8 major positions of desire for flesh, has a total of 3 directions: resurrection, necromancy, transformation, and guardianship. Blood and flesh shaping is a professional skill that can be seen as a transformation direction at a glance. It is estimated that Xia Xiu obtained his human form through ritual transformation from the bio species. Therefore, as a flesh-seeking think tank, Adabus directly gave him the core technology for the transformation path. Xia Xiu knows the ways to obtain and combine several transformational terms in the desire meat lineage, and he also knows where to obtain the DNA template organisms needed for transformation. However, the top priority now is to understand the surrounding situation. Because he had been holding back for a month after wearing more and more clothes, he also had a rough idea of some small treasure troves in the Kurata mansion, and his next time was to search for her collection. After 1 hour. In the library of Kurata, 10 bundles of banknotes with denominations of 100 are placed on the table, which are called central currency. A bag of sliced bread from a supermarket can be bought with central currency, and the amount of bread in a bag can cover 2 days of meals for an adult male. In addition to the central coins, there are also 15 dark green square stones placed, which are standard magic stones, 10 cubic centimeters. A standard magic stone has a universal Eve particle content of 100 spirits. This thing can be used for non-spiritual casting or to supplement the mage's Eve particles. 100,000 central coins and 15 magic stones. Xia Xiu looked at these charming things with a satisfied smile. He liked these charming things, and the more they were, the better. After counting these basic belongings, Xia Xiu turned his gaze to several envelopes on the study, most of which were payment lists and a few were insignificant details. And there happened to be a text message that caught Xia Xiu's attention. Wandman Communication, short message. The world's top 10 extraordinary enclaves, 3 Portland, recently sailed out of the Sea of Chaos and has now passed through the Dublin area. It is expected to make landfall in the Wudu area this month. The Wudu Clock Tower will handle the relevant matters of both cities, referred to as landfall in Wudu. Short message. Bashi Liyuan announced to the public that a new recruitment meeting will be held, which will take place in 26 countries with central alliances. Newsletter. The Olatine Empire and the Diva Empire are conducting a joint military exercise. During this joint military exercise, the Gir Orthodox Church of the Diva Empire has displayed some new mechanical magic statues to the outside world. Newsletter. Detailed rules for opening up new airlines. The Wand Man is a group of super-dimensional journalists and archivists. They seek to explore the multiverse and uncover its secrets, while spreading and preserving knowledge. Simply put, they are Terra's extraordinary group of journalists. Xia Xiu carefully reviewed the text message again, especially the 3rd and 4th items. He cares so much about the last 2 messages because the 3rd and 4th expansion packs of the game are related to these 2 messages. The name of the 3rd expansion pack of the game is New Route Opening. Lost Land, while the 4th expansion pack is War of Nations. These 2 expansion packs have killed a lot of people, including Yang, Diva, and Old Tin. However, in these 2 expansion packs, their brains were completely destroyed, and a large number of magical applications were invested, resulting in the entire Terra being contaminated by ether radiation. This also laid the groundwork for the 5th expansion pack of the game. However, these are still too far away for Xia Xiu. He knows through the calendar that it is February 3rd, 1589 in the Terra calendar, and there are still 11 years left until the Unification War. At most now, it is still far from the stage of starting to engage in military expansion by Old Tin and Diva. Xia Xiu rubbed her chin and began to ponder. His original plan was to become an adventurer and then search for ways to strengthen himself in Yuyang according to his memory. He estimated that the travel time would be 1 year. The reason for it being 1 year is that the first expansion pack of the game, Ensemble Performance, took place in the year 1590 of the Terra calendar. He planned to use 1 year to elevate himself to stage 2 and elevate his lineage level. Only in this way can he seek corresponding benefits in the first expansion pack. Here we need to briefly mention Terra's extraordinary history. In the year 221 of the Taylor calendar, people discovered the magic stone. Discovered the origin of extraordinary communication through the use of magic stones, the ocean of Ethereum. But the greedy people of Terra are not satisfied with this magical release that requires external objects. They want to directly contact the ether ocean and seize its extraordinary power. So, the people of Terra developed various magic systems, through which people could directly release magic without relying on magic stones. Terra has entered the Golden Millennium, with the development of magical systems and deepening exploration of the Ethereum. In the year 1020 of the Terra calendar, magicians were divided into 5 stages based on their power, and the systematic hierarchy was accepted by Terra's magicians. These 5 stages are: Stage 1. Surveyor, Stage 2. Manifester, Stage 3. Dominator, Stage 4. Coronation, Stage 5. Miracle. These 5 stages are universal to any lineage. Whether it is the heavenly kingdom of the largest lineage, the desire of the Abhidharma lineage, or a small lineage with only one normal state, all use these 5 stages to divide their own magical masters. The stage classification of the lineage is the same, while the class ranking is different. Take heaven and desire for flesh as an example. The heavenly kingdom has a rank of 3, 9, and 20.6 job positions. The desire for flesh faction is composed of 6 classes and 8 major job positions. Class represents the corresponding permissions, computing resources, and think tank assistance that you can obtain in this lineage. For a magician, stage represents hardware, while class represents software. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. The Blank Gang. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. The Blank Gang. Wudu, Lambeth 707 line. Wearing a white trench coat with a brown vest underneath, and wearing a white Panama hat on his head, Xia Xiu got off the steam train. He reached out and pressed his hat, then glanced at the sign on the central street and headed towards his destination. Since learning that Liyuan is recruiting new students and his first stop is Wudu, Xia Xiu has changed his plan. He now plans to become a student of Liyuan through Liyuan's recruitment. Deer Academy, founded in the 350th year of the Teller calendar, is a co-educational liberal arts college located in the southeast of Portland. Liyuan is not only renowned for its pioneering integration of mystical research with liberal arts education courses, but also for its high standards of mystical practice, creative thinking, and positive multiverse citizenship. Dear students pursue a Bachelor of Arts degree in over 40 key fields of study. The school's curriculum includes a 1-year course in mysticism, with extensive allocation requirements and graduation topics. Each student constructs their own learning plan by combining traditional majors with key areas of mysticism, or chooses from some established interdisciplinary majors. Deer Academy is one of the few organizations willing to accept and educate owners of different lineages, and has always maintained a relatively neutral political stance. Many famous figures in Terra are students of Deer Academy, and 4 of the 12 seats in the clock tower during the foggy period have studied at Deer Academy. The enrollment of Deer Academy does not value bloodline and extraordinary talents like Clock Tower. It is willing to admit even ordinary people, but of course, these ordinary people must have special talents, such as excellent literary talent. Xia Xiu's purpose at this time is to obtain the enrollment qualification of Liyuan, which has 3 enrollment channels. The first method is to use a magical creation called Spirit Recognition Owl to hold a magical envelope engraved with directional cognitive instructions and bring it to a person with magical potential and hand it over to them. Those with potential only need to open the envelope and read the content on it, and naturally know how to get to the deer yard. The second type is the recommendation system, which goes without saying much. Those who understand it, and this is the favorite of relationship holders. The third option is to randomly select. There are always a few lucky ones selected due to the mischief of the 3 Portland mayors. Xia Xiu wants to become a student at the Deer Academy, but he ignores the first and third possibilities. Only the second method meets his own needs. He happens to know that there are people here in Wudu who have the qualification to recommend him. The purpose of his trip is to come and worship the mountain. Lambeth slums. Although it was noon, the subtle mist still shrouded the streets. Continuing east from here leads to the industrial zone. You just need to look up and you can see the black smoke screen, and the people around you are looking at Xia Xiu with strange eyes. Stinky bitch. Stinky bitch. How many times have I told you not to crush bugs on wallpaper? Do you think you bought the entire hotel? Why can't you throw them out the window like everyone else? Damn it, you bitch. Cow. As we passed by a small hotel, vulgar and unusual screams and curses rang out. Many idle men were laughing and holding bottles with little alcohol. Apart from arguing, there were also the lonely cries of street vendors and the playful sounds of children chasing orange peels on the cobblestone streets. At night, there is a loud singing sound, and when garbage trucks pass by, they leave a foul odor, which is the style of the entire street. This street is very narrow. On both sides are towering and dirty houses, piled up upside down, as if frozen when they collapsed. All the houses were opened as small hotels, filled with tenants, mostly workers, special industry workers, and thieves. Downstairs of the hotel is a small tavern, where you can get drunk for just a few yuan. On weekend evenings, 1/3 of men in this area get drunk and fight for women. The movers who stayed in the cheapest hotels were always fighting in their dens, fighting with chairs and sometimes even using guns. However, despite the dirty and noisy environment, there are still some decent people from Wudu who work as small shop owners, bakers, and laundry women. They only interact with their own people and accumulate small amounts of wealth peacefully. This is a typical foggy slum. Under the strange gaze of passers-by, Xia Xiu walked towards the darkest part of the slums, which was the gathering place of gangs selling addictive drugs. Corpses could be seen everywhere, and the scent of sin flowed everywhere. The largest gang in Lambeth is the Blank Gang. Legend has it that the leaders of the Blank Gang possess extraordinary power, and there are also rumors that the Blank Gang is not a human, but a monster disguised in human skin. Xia Xiu can only say that they are really right about this. Most of their members are really not human. The composition of the Black Gang is very complex, consisting of wild magicians, werewolves, and ghosts. This is a group of monsters formed to survive in the fog and keep warm. Hey, little devil over there, what do you want? A rugged-looking man stopped Xia Xiu, and next to him stood a man with a bare chest and a blue scarf on his head. Bless, don't scare the children. Kid, are you here to find your mother? Do you want uncle to take you home? Uncle's house is very big. Kobe beside him first smiled and scolded less, then asked Xia Xiu with a friendly expression. Harm, Xia Xiu sighed helplessly. This vulgar scene always makes people feel bored, and these gangsters are still so cliché and uninteresting. Come on, kid, uncle will take you to play some fun. Kobe reached out to grab onto Xia Xiu, while Xia Xiu's eyes flickered with a cold light. He lifted his right elbow and slammed it hard against Kobe's waist. Kobe felt as if his chest had been hit by a giant wood, and he floated out of nowhere before flying out horizontally. Kobe covered his abdomen and curled up like a shrimp, foaming on the ground. UTMD. Upon seeing this, Rex pulled out the dagger hanging from his waist and stabbed it directly into Xia Xiu's head. In Xia Xiu's opinion, Rex's movements were too slow. For magicians, even for newcomers who have just become magicians, the movements of ordinary people are as slow as driving at 0.5 times the speed in their eyes. Xia Xiu dodged Lei Si's stab sideways, then held down his right hand holding the dagger with both hands and forcefully broke it. Ah! Rex let out a painful howl. Xia Xiu held the dagger that had fallen off Lei Si, and then threw the opponent over the shoulder, causing them to fall to the ground. He pressed the other person's fallen body with his knees and then forcefully stabbed the dagger towards his head. Click, blood dripped down, and Rex stared in horror at the dagger that ran across his cheek. He looked at the blond boy with a fearful gaze, whose delicate face was filled with a brilliant smile. His eyes narrowed slightly, making it impossible for him to see the boy's true emotions. Xia Xiu looked at the frightened gangster and reached out his right hand to place it on his bleeding cheek, then launched a flesh and blood shaping technique to directly sew up his wound. "Sir, could you take me to meet Mr. Stephen? I have a business here that I would like to discuss with him." Xia Xiu stood up and took off his hat, placing it on his chest, and politely asked Lei Si. Les groped his instantly healed wound in a daze, as if he understood something. The other party is an existence with extraordinary power, just like the leader. He swallowed his saliva and hurriedly said. "Gulong, I'll guide you, sir." End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Requires extra money. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7 requires extra money. Lei Si humbly led Xia Xiu to a two-story house and awkwardly smiled at Xia Xiu. "Lord Stephen is here, he's usually here during the day, Xia Xiu glanced at him, and he naturally knew what Lei Si was embarrassed about. The other party knew they were a magician and knew that only leaders who were also magicians could fight Xia Xiu, so Lei Si didn't hesitate to lead Xia Xiu. If it were an ordinary person hitting him, he would have called his brothers to fight shoulder to shoulder long ago. Lei Si believes that his leader, who is also a magician, can definitely defeat this inexperienced kid, but ultimately, this kind of behavior as a guide is still very awkward. "Thank you." After Xia Xiu spoke to Lei Si, he walked straight to the door. He twisted the door handle, but the door was not locked, so he opened it directly and walked in. Xia Xiutai's direct behavior left Lei Si standing outside the door stunned, so he went in. He's either staying or not leaving now, he's a bit disoriented. The interior of the house looks unusually dull, with curtains pulled up next to the windows. These curtains have a very good light blocking effect, and the light outside appears particularly weak after being filtered by the curtains. Xia Xiu looked through the dim light at a painting hanging in the center of the room, which was a portrait of an equal figure. The painting depicts a man wearing a white wig and formal attire. The man inserted his right hand into the buckle of his coat, while his left hand held a ceremonial sword. He had a pair of sharp eyes, and at that moment, he was staring ahead with those sharp eyes. Xia Xiu approached the painting and politely took off his hat, nodding slightly to the other person and saying, "Good afternoon, Mr. Stephen." A complete silence. The whole room was still quiet, while Xia Xiu stood quietly in front of the portrait, his eyes slightly narrowed. 1 minute. 2 minutes. 5 minutes later, Stephen in the portrait spoke up. "Kid, do you have anything to do with me?" Stephen in the portrait pulled his hand out of the seam of his clothes, then extended his hand towards the edge of the painting. He pulled out a chair out of nowhere, sat on it, raised his head, and asked the young man with golden hair and eyes in front of him. 3 Portland is about to log into Wudu. Oh. Luyuan has started a new round of recruitment. I would like you to recommend me to go to Luyuan. Oh, my goodness. Stephen raised his eyebrows and then said in a frivolous tone. "I am a gangster, and I am not qualified to recommend students to Deer Academy. I see that your child has a unique skeleton, and those owls should be able to come to you with envelopes and invite you to join Deer Academy. Spiritual awareness does not send commands to people with lineages," Xia Xiu continued, looking at Stephen's playful gaze. "The city government of 3 Portland is formed in the form of a mayor-council model, which exercises legislative and law enforcement functions uniformly and is supervised by the mayor's name. The city council is a unicameral institution with members elected by the city, and adopts a single transferable voting mechanism to achieve proportional representation." As Xia Xiu's sentences progressed, Stephen's gaze gradually became gloomy from the initial playfulness. Moreover, 3 Portland is one of the few cities that allows ghost voting. Chang, the sharp blade was unsheathed, and Stephen walked out of the painting at some point. The thin sword in his hand was pressed against Xia Xiu's Adam's apple, and as soon as he pushed his hand forward, blood would burst out with a splash. Mr. Stephen, be careful. Xia Xiu raised his hands and chuckled lightly at Stephen, while Stephen looked coldly at Xia Xiu and said to him, "You know I'm a ghost, and you also know that I come from 3 Portland. It seems like you know more." Xia Xiu knew about Stephen because he was a former NPC responsible for distributing tasks to the Deer Academy lineage in the Wudu area. Stephen was originally a ghost counselor of the Deer Academy, but later learned that Camilchifeni, the 6th chair of the clock tower, had created a unique art of portrait manifestation, so he went from the Deer Academy to Wudu to learn. Portraits are visualized through spells and potions. Whether it's a photo or a painting, the magician of the clock tower can cast magic on it to make it move. Even Camilchifeni, who took these photos with his regular camera, could activate them with magic. As long as he used the correct potion on them. The more you invest, the more realistic the portrait will be. Many families in the clock tower have begun to consciously create this kind of manifestation portrait, because this kind of portrait is convenient for passing down their own inheritance. With further research on this magic, magicians have discovered that portrait technology can also retain ghosts, who can freely shuttle through the portrait, and ghosts in the portrait are more likely to observe the ether ocean. It perfectly conforms to the 3 laws of magic. Stephen left Deer Academy and came to Wudu because he was interested in portrait art. He was supposed to study new technologies well at the clock tower. Unfortunately, he himself is a ghost who can't resist loneliness, so he always wants to find some fun. So, in order to have fun, he joined the Black Gang. At this moment, Stephen's thin sword slightly pierced the skin of Xia Xiu's throat, and tiny blood droplets condensed on the tip of the sword. Stephen looked at Xia Xiu sharply. If Xia Xiu didn't give him a reason not to kill him next, or if the reason was not sufficient, then the next scene would be the blood jet stage. Mr. Stephen. Xia Xiu shrugged his shoulders helplessly, and then his left hand shone with a red book floating on it. Stephen looked at Xia Xiu's left hand, and then he seemed to feel something. He immediately withdrew the thin sword and looked at Xia Xiu with an unusually disdainful gaze. That gaze seemed like Xia Xiu was a dirty thing. Anyone who saw it had to shy away. It turns out to be an offspring of the heavenly kingdom, unlucky. It's best for you not to die here, kid. I don't want to be marked as a heretic by the heavenly think tank Eden, and then inexplicably become the prey of the Grey Knight. I am still a newcomer and the sequence of life book in the think tank is at the bottom, Xia Xiu said with a shy smile. Who are you pretending to be pure with, TMD? There is no good thing among the offspring in heaven, especially those who squint their eyes. Stephen looked contemptuously at the despicable squinting little devil. The red book of the heavenly kingdom, shouldn't you be a member of the Knights Order in the Holy Temple, the trial court, or the burial institution? Why are you running all over to me, begging me to go to the deer court? Stephen continued to sneer at Xia Xiu. Because I walk on 2 boats, afraid of being discovered and dismembered directly. Xia Xiu muttered to himself, but on the surface, he said with a secretive expression. I naturally did this for a reason. Oh, then why should I recommend someone with ulterior motives to my alma mater? 30,000 central bank coins, Stephen angrily said, what nonsense are you talking about? Am I the kind of person who sells my alma mater for money? Add 10,000, Lu Yuan is my youth. All my knowledge is nurtured by her. How could you underestimate my relationship with my alma mater so much? So. We need to add money. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Login. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Login. Finally, Xia Xiu successfully gained Mr. Stephen's appreciation with 60,000 yuan of central currency. He immediately wrote a recommendation letter to Xia Xiu and handed it to him. There is a special Mimu pheromone on it, and Shirling will naturally find you. You can follow Shirling's instructions when the time comes. Thank you very much, Mr. Stephen. The money will be handed over to you soon. Then Xia Xiu left here directly, while Stephen smiled and said goodbye to him from behind. Listening to Stephen's cheerful farewell, Xia Xiu smiled and shook his head, then quickened his pace of departure. Ah, sir, you have come out. Lei Si, who had been spinning in place outside the door, saw Xia Xiu walking out of the house and scathed. For a moment, his tongue seemed to be tangled and he didn't know how to speak. You come with me, go to my house to get some things. That's a gift for Mr. Stephen. Yes, it's my honor. So Rex followed Xia Xiu more respectfully, and the two of them took the train to the central area of Lambeth. Xia Xiu asked Rex to wait in front of a high-end hotel called Sankei Inn. After harvesting all the belongings of the Kradachi mansion, Xia Xiu directly set fire to her mansion and then pretended to be a student who came from Orleans to study in Wudu, opening a house here as a student. In high-end places, as long as the money is in place, they won't ask what they should or shouldn't ask. Besides, who would think that a teenager aged 10, 5, or 6 would be such a vicious criminal? Xia Xiu took out a suitcase and filled it with 60,000 yuan. Then he went downstairs and handed the box to Lei Si, asking him to deliver the money to Stephen's hand. After dismissing Rex, Xia Xiu went straight back to the high-end room he rented. He took out Stephen's recommendation letter from his pocket, carefully looked at it, and then placed him on the table, with his right hand covering it and his index finger rhythmically tapping. Now that I have received the recommendation letter, the next step is to wait for the login of 3 Portland. Xia Xiuxin Dao. Terra Calendar February 6, 1589 3 Portland login to Wudu. 3 Portland is currently the largest supernormal enclave in central China, with 80,000 residents permanently settled. A large number of mobile populations pass through cities every day. There are about 2,000 people working full-time in Sanwa City, who commute through secret paths. The floating population within the 3 Polish tribes are mostly mystical scholars, abnormal artists, and special races. I heard that there are still Greek refugees who have escaped from Avalon living inside. Beside a building in the suburbs of Wudu that resembles the Grand Council Hall, Big Ben, the chief of the contemporary clock tower, Bartholomew Felice, and several colleagues are observing the giant objects appearing above from the observation deck. A super-large magic recoil device, 45,000 hidden runes of Mimu, a large hidden magic instrument. This is 3 Portland, sighed Bartholomew. Chief, do we need to make some reactions on our end as well? Of course we do, after all, the deer yard is on top, so we are all competitors, Bartholomew chuckled lightly. With Bartholomew's affirmation, the clock tower also responded. The clock tower is surrounded by barriers to drive away crowds, which have been set up to the maximum extent. Physical removal of barriers is carried out from national road surveys or maps, while visual obstruction barriers are set up. Today, only 1 or 2 barriers, which are usually set up, have been fully opened. In addition, satellite cities that have been transformed by 11 disciplines have also opened up boundaries in various neighborhoods such as Sla and Roxroth, which are distributed around Wudu. Having 70 classrooms owned by various disciplines, as well as 5 large classrooms jointly managed by all, the boundary is opened without any cost. In this case, although it is a classroom, from the perspective of a magician, it is more appropriate to call it 75 cities. In addition to these, there is also a grand secret ceremony unfolding underground in the foggy city. Spirit Tomb. Albion. The normally active Eve particles were suppressed to their lowest activity as the barrier unfolded, and many magicians in the fog felt a strong discomfort. Stephen, who was in the Lambeth slum, ran directly out of the portrait. As Eve particles are suppressed, the world of portraits is also solidified. If he doesn't run out again, he will really turn into a painting. Stephen felt the inert Eve particles and couldn't help but curse the neuroticism of the clock tower in his heart. Why did you open so many barriers for such a special reception ceremony? 3 Portland ceased to float above the clock tower, and it remained quietly suspended above it. In front of Bethermero, a six-pointed star formation composed of complex triangles appeared on the ground, emitting a gentle light. Along with the formation appeared a middle-aged man in a dark robe. "Hello, I'm Albert Longan from Deer House." "Hello, I am the chief of the clock tower, Bethermero Felice." "Mr. Leongan, let's go inside and have a meeting. We have prepared a sumptuous pastry for you." Bethermero made a gesture of invitation to Leongan. "Excuse me, Your Excellency." Bethermero brought Leongan to the scheduled interview location, and Leongan looked at a penguin in the lobby that was photographed with a camera towards them. The penguin looked exceptionally round. "The staff of the Wandsman newspaper are really dedicated," Leongan pushed his glasses. "They have the most advanced space magic and speech skills of all Terra, actively expanding their communication with the outside world while maintaining an absolutely neutral political stance. And what they want is only to satisfy their strong curiosity, so we have no reason to stop them," said Bethermero. "Most of Terra's forces maintain a relatively friendly attitude towards the Wand Man, and most people do not have much opinion about their interviews. Let's go inside and talk." "Okay." Bethermero and Lorngen sat down at the same time, while the servants brought the refined dim sum and coffee, and they casually tasted them. "Mr. Leongan, I would like to ask how long 3 Portland will stay in the Wudu area this time." "This time, 3 Portland is expected to stay in Wudu for a month. You should have heard that we plan to circle Yuyang and conduct a new round of recruitment during the journey." "Only in the presence of Yang," Bethermero said with profound meaning. "Diva in the north and Ultin in the far east are not on the route of this voyage. So your ultimate goal should be in Edison." "Can you say that?" "Eddie, I heard that the Church of the Holy See and Eddie have been planning to form an ocean fleet to cross the Chaos Sea in search of lost and promised lands, and 3 Portland has rich experience in navigating the Chaos Sea," Bethermero pointed out. "Well, I've also heard some interesting rumors about the Central Committee and the Church of the Holy See planning to form a crusade again for the Eastern Expedition." R.A. Yunzhen took a sip of coffee and then smiled gently. The atmosphere in the hall suddenly became dull. "I'm showing off today." End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Wisdom. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9 Wisdom. I think we should talk about recruiting new students. I hope that the Wudu side can allow Shirling to independently search for new students within the country. "We are willing to pay the corresponding fees for this," said Leongan, shifting the topic in a timely manner. "Of course it's possible, but let's not talk about the cost for now. Both the Clock Tower and Deer Academy are based on the Blue Book as their main theme. For us, knowledge is more important, and we want to use this month to have a good exchange of cutting-edge research with Deer Academy." Bethermero took the topic and said, "It is our honor to communicate with the Clock Tower." Subsequently, the two of them had friendly negotiations on the recruitment of new employees. In the end, the two decided to start recruiting in 3 days, and Bartholomew welcomed the arrival of 3 Portland on behalf of the Wudu side. After the conversation, Leongan did not stay here much longer. After bidding farewell to Bethermero, he boarded the formation again and returned to 3 Portland. After Leongan left, Bethermero turned his gaze to the sneaky penguin in the corner. The penguin noticed Bethermero's gaze and casually stuffed the camera under his furry belly, then tugged at the bow on his chest. Then the penguin reached out and pulled out from the void. A top hat and an ebony cane appeared on his hands, and he elegantly bowed to Bethermero. Then, his entire figure slowly disappeared into the void. It's really an exciting space shuttle, able to shuttle freely in such a low-activity Eve particle environment. The Wand Man really has an amazing skill. The voice of Colin Creevy, the 6th seat owner of the Clock Tower, came from the side. "How did you come out? Don't you usually stay in your own world of paintings?" Bethermero turned to look at Colin. "There are a few inexperienced kids under my door. Just because of the Eve particle disturbance, their world in the painting has been solidified. I came out to loosen the frame for them, so they wouldn't die in the painting," Colin said helplessly. That person just now is probably Albert Longan, the head of the non-natural science group at Deer Academy. I have read his 17 synopsis on ether superconductivity. He is a very powerful guy, Colin continued looking at 3 Portland in the sky. He's really a powerful guy, Bartholomew said with a deep gaze. By the way, do we just let the Deer Yard take away the talents from Wudu? Colin said sadly. Otherwise. Not everyone in the clock tower is as indifferent to bloodline as you are. Even with exceptional talents, in the eyes of the magicians in the clock tower, they are muggles who lack bloodline and are not worth wasting resources. Rather than letting them rot in a pot, it's better to let the people of Liyuan take them away. Colin remembered the arrogant faces of the nobles and monarchs in the clock tower and immediately agreed with Bartholomew's words. Time passed quickly, and 3 days passed in a flash. Tonight is the day for the recruitment of new members in the Liyuan. Terra calendar February 9, 1589 Red Moon Night, misty. In the observation hall of 3 Portland, a huge spherical holographic projection floats in the center of the hall, with the heads of the 4 universities of the Deer Academy Mysterious Studies Group and other professors standing below the projection. Professor Mansour, thank you for bothering me, Leongan said to a beautiful woman beside him. Well, I have already released all the consciousness spirits. Next is waiting. Sankei Hotel. Xia Xiu was savoring his coffee while reading a biography of the church. Just as he was enjoying it, the envelope he had placed on the table suddenly drifted away without any wind. Pop. Xia Xiu closed the biography, got up, picked up the windbreaker and hat from the hanger, and then took out a suitcase that contained some necessary laundry items and money. Xia Xiu came to the window and opened the doors and windows. A cool breeze blew in from outside, adding a touch of coolness to the room. The envelope flew out the window, and Xia Xiu looked up at the bright red moon in the night sky. A snow owl flew over with a red glow, its snow-white feathers mixed with many black spots. It was holding Stephen's recommendation letter in its mouth. The snow owl fluttered its wings and arrived at Xia Xiu's room. Xia Xiu naturally extended his right hand, and the snow owl rested on its arm. After stopping, the snow owl tilted its bulging head and stared at the young man in front of it with golden eyes. Xia Xiu slowly took out the precious chocolate that had already been prepared, peeled off the packaging of the chocolate, and then handed it to Snow Owl. The Snow Owl, on the other hand, anthropomorphizes and displays a very innocent expression on its face. It happily eats the chocolate that Xia Xiu Xiaojing gave it. Hiccup, after eating the 15th piece of chocolate, the Snow Owl let out a satisfying burp, caressing its slightly swollen belly with its wings. Subsequently, the Snow Owl flew onto Xia Xiu's shoulder and patted the hat on his head with its wings, as if saying, "You kid, I'll cover it up in the future." Xia Xiu smiled and picked up the recommendation letter thrown by the Snow Owl on the ground. He flicked the envelope with his index finger, reminding it to get down to business. The Snow Owl suddenly remembered its duty. It flew up to Xia Xiu, then spread its wings and the envelope flew into the middle of the Snow Owl's wings. The envelope began to burn. The burning sparks of the envelope splashed around, and a bright circular array appeared on the floor. The diameter of the circular formation began to slowly extend outward, and soon a formation with a diameter of over 1 meter was formed. Then, a portal slowly rose up from the formation, depicting the Kabbalah tree of life. Xia Xiu touched his chin and looked at the door with great interest. This portal is just a portal to the 3 Portlands, and he is interested because its exterior design is modeled after the legendary Gate of Truth. It seems that the person who created this gateway has seen the Gate of Truth, and the Deer Academy is really full of talented people. At this moment, the Snow Owl patted Xia Xiu with its wings and then pointed to the door in front of it, shouting, meaning to let him in quickly. "Yes, come in immediately." Xia Xiu straightened the hat that had been tilted by the Snow Owl, and then strode towards the door with his suitcase, which opened its own door. After Xia Xiu entered, the door quickly closed and then burst open, making the entire room incredibly quiet. 3 Portland Stand Square. A continuous drizzle fell from a misty sky. Upon closer inspection, one can notice that the raindrops themselves transition between numerous dreamy styles as they fall, dyeing the sky with enchanting colors. On the square, Xia Xiu reached out his hand to feel the drizzle. He gazed at the vast urban agglomeration, with thousands or even hundreds of holographic projections appearing at various street intersections. The rhythmic rock tunes moved with the light of the projections. This is the paradise of extraordinary enclaves, sub-era cities, artists, writers, scientists, magicians, and musicians. 3 Portland. This place is really filled with very strong Eve particles. Just as Xia Xiu was lost in the scenery of 3 Portland, he felt something peering into his own mind. A soul sorcerer. No, this technique is too unfamiliar. I can easily counteract with just a slight flick of the lineage now. While thinking about Xia Xiu, he began adjusting his lineage's loudness. Under normal circumstances, the positional loudness around the human body is 5 dB, decibels, while novice magicians maintain this value at 10 dB. Every 10 decibel increase indicates a 10-fold increase in volume, meaning that a decrease from 1 decibel to 20 decibels indicates a 100-fold increase in volume. At this moment, Xia Xiu relied on the red book to reduce 10 dB to 1 dB, and then suddenly increased the pitch. Ah! A painful howl sounded from within the grass in front of Xia Xiu, and he walked towards the direction of the grass. Passing through the grass, he saw an owl helplessly covering its ears, with a girl lying limp and screaming beside it. This girl has a pair of ponytails, a rustic round-framed glasses on her face, and a washed white dress. Her narrow bangs make it impossible for people to see her face, and only her perfect jaw can be used to guess her appearance. Well, there's one more thing. That is the difficult situation where the buttons on her chest are constantly overwhelmed and can collapse at any time. Madam, it's a big taboo to casually use mind-searching magic on other magicians. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Camilchifeni. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Camilchifeni. My name is Camilchifeni and I am 22 years old. Living in the Bremley area of Wudu, unmarried. I am a sophomore studying psychology at the University of Westminster in Wudu. I have to study at the school library until 8 p.m. every day to go home, because I have to avoid my jealous cousin and my abusive aunt. I don't wear makeup, don't gossip, and don't fall in love. Go to bed at 11 p.m. and get 8 hours of sleep every day. Before going to bed, I always do eye exercises because I always feel that there is something wrong with my eyes and I always see things that are inexplicable. Once I get into bed, I can immediately fall asleep. Once you wake up at dawn, never leave fatigue and stress until the next day. Friends. I don't have any friends, I think I'm normal. That's weird. At the age of 14, Camille discovered her extraordinary talent. She was always able to read the emotions or psychology of others, and her eyes could always see strange things. She has never told anyone about these things, it's her secret. Camille's parents passed away due to human error when she was 10 years old, so she could only stay at her uncle's house. Uncle is a relatively indifferent person, he is only responsible for a portion of Camille's living expenses and tuition fees, and never cares much about his own niece. Camille's aunt is a woman with a snake and scorpion heart, and she has always believed that Camille eats and drinks for free at her house. Not mentioning the fact that I took Camille's parents' inheritance, my aunt always treated Camille as a maid at home. And Camille's cousin truly deserves to be her aunt's biological daughter, perfectly inheriting her mother's harshness. However, even in situations where various debugs were stacked to the brim, she still managed to get into the University of Westminster through her own efforts and received a full scholarship. Camille has been calm since going to college, and her aunt and cousin's difficulties have also been somewhat restrained after she went to college. During his college years, there was only one thing that caught Camille's attention, not a confession, but something a female professor named Phoenix said to him. "Unfortunately, you're just a muggle with no bloodline." Professor Phoenix was her first object of failed spiritual observation. At that time, she gathered the courage to ask Professor Phoenix if she knew anything about herself. The professor sighed and replied, "You have a talent called synesthesia, but unfortunately, you are a muggle." Muggles. It's nothing, let's go to class. Camille could feel the repulsive feeling on Professor Phoenix even without using synesthesia, so she dared not ask more questions. After this incident, Professor Phoenix did not have any further interaction with her, as if they were born out of the same circle. And today, on the red moon night of February 9, 1589, the second unforgettable event happened to Camille, which also changed her life. Just as Camille was washing up as usual, preparing to read a book and then going to bed, she found that her own window had been opened, and an owl stood proudly on the windowsill. I don't know if it's an illusion, but she felt that the owl's gaze towards her was filled with arrogance. The owl was still holding a letter in its mouth, and Camille couldn't figure out what was happening for a moment. One person and one owl stared blankly at each other for a minute. Finally, the owl showed an indestructible expression of rotting wood. It threw the envelope in its mouth directly onto Camille's face, and the bewildered Camille took the letter off his face. She curiously opened the envelope, which contained a sentence written in Thai. "Do you crave knowledge?" Just as Camille looked confused, the words on the envelope began to change automatically. "Yes, you crave what the hell?" The envelope suddenly ignited, causing Camille to retract his hand in fear. The splashing sparks formed a circular formation on the ground, followed by an illusory portal rising from the formation, depicting an upside-down tree composed of 10 circles and 22 paths. Camille stared at this extraordinary scene in astonishment. Just when she was at a loss, the door opened and the owl flew behind her at some point. How could I have an ominous feeling? Her premonition was correct. Just as she was lost in thought, the despicable owl behind her hit her waist with a hammer, causing her to stumble and fall into the doorway. After Camille entered, the owl followed in with flapping wings. When Camille opened her eyes, she saw this dreamy scene. The sky is drizzling uniquely, and the streets are filled with strange light pollution and noisy noises. Where is this? Am I dreaming? Camille was shocked by this strange scene. When Camille was in a daze, she saw a door appeared in the square in front of her, which was exactly the same as the door she had seen before. Camille saw someone walking out of it and was so scared that she hid in the nearby grass. At the same time, she reached out and pressed down the owl parked on her head, tightly covering the other person's beak. The owl, whose beak was covered, looked at Camille with the eyes of a person with special disabilities for a long time, while Camille was secretly observing the person coming out of the door. While using her talent to quietly explore the other person, she wanted to know their intelligence. Camille easily penetrated into the other person's heart, and just as she was preparing to read their thoughts, a piercing roar suddenly sounded, as if her heart had been struck by a heavy hammer. She couldn't help but let out a mournful cry. It's over. It's revealed that the other person was attracted by their own voice, and it's almost over. Madam, it's a big taboo to casually use mind-searching magic on other magicians. Unlike what was imagined, a gentle voice reached Camille's ear, and she seemed to notice her embarrassment, so she deliberately added a playful ending when speaking. Camille lifted her head in a daze, her loose glasses sliding and clasped on both sides of her nose. She opened her mouth slightly and gazed at the hand reaching out to her. At this moment, the rain had stopped and a brilliant aurora appeared in the sky. What appeared in front of her was a teenager of 15 or 6 years old, with a pair of bright but gentle golden eyes. He was very handsome, the type that left a deep impression upon seeing him once. Camille dumbfounded and grabbed the hand that the other person was reaching out to her, then was helped up by the other person. Her height was 1.68 meters, while the young man was slightly taller than him. Boys of this age should be able to grow even longer. Camille thought to himself. Madam, are you okay? The voice of concern echoed in her ear again, and Camille panicked for some reason. Me, I'm good, I'm good. Well, your face looks a bit too rosy. It's nothing, really. Well, can you let go of my hand, madam? Ah, not good. I'm sorry. Relax, madam. Ah. Camille felt a bit embarrassed. End of this chapter.